The second episode of Loki has released on Disney Plus, and there is much to break down, including the identity of the variant Loki, a big connection to Thor Ragnarok, the ending, Easter eggs, and much more. In particular, I'm going to be giving you my breakdown of Loki episode 2 entitled The Variant, in the aim to help you guys understand the events and discover things you missed. This video will also contain spoilers from Loki episode 2, so if you do happen to be someone who hasn't watched the episode yet, then I would recommend watching this video after you've seen it. But if you want to watch more videos on all of the Disney Plus Marvel shows, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Instagram at Cortex Videos, which is all linked in the description below. But without further ado, let's dive into Loki episode 2 and all of the latest time-related twists. So in Loki episode 2, many spanners get thrown into the works of the plot as Marvel's God of Mischief tracks down the lethal Loki variant by using Thor Ragnarok to figure out how they're evading the TVA. The episode ends on a huge cliffhanger as one of the biggest fan theories was officially confirmed with the arrival of the cunning Lady Loki, played by Sophia DiMartino. Tom Hiddleston's Loki, who is the 2012 version of the character that escaped with the Tesseract in Avengers Endgame, is now working with the Time Variance Authority, although he's in their custody as a prisoner after causing a breach to the timeline. He and Owen Wilson's Mobius make significant headway when going over the details of the variant Loki's attacks, eventually resulting in them working out where they are hiding. So who is Lady Loki, and what significance could Thor Ragnarok have on the Marvel series? Well, at the end of Loki episode 1, Mobius had informed the protagonist that the rogue variant who the TVA is trying to hunt down is actually another version of himself. By the end of episode 2, it's confirmed that it was Lady Loki all along. The introduction of Lady Loki in the MCU goes in a slightly different direction to the Marvel comic books, as in the comics, Lady Loki is Loki in female form, as opposed to being a separate version of the character who he can converse with face to face. Lady Loki was introduced in the Marvel Comics in 2008 when Loki took over a human female body that was actually intended for Asgardian warrior Lady Sif after the events of Ragnarok. In 2014, Loki's gender fluidity was also made canon before also being confirmed in the MCU in a promo video released for the Disney Plus series. But in episode 2, there's some important character beats and we learn a lot more about potential connections in the build-up to this reveal. Loki episode 2 kicks off with yet another cruel, elaborate trick from the hooded Loki variant. This time, the variant is attacking a squad of hunters in Wisconsin 1985 at a Renaissance fair of all places. With all the fairgoers dressed in medieval outfits, it's a pretty fun way of including another time period in the show without having to actually visit that era. That said, it's not fun for a Minutemen character, Hunter C-20, who's brainwashed and forced to dispatch her own squad before the Loki variant knocks her out, kidnaps her, and drags her through a golden time door. This is just another example of how relentless this other version of Loki is, something that the TVA-allied Loki attempts to explain to Mobius and the other hunters when they try to track down the missing team. It's also important to note that a version of Agatha could also have made an appearance in this scene, as when the TVA arrive, a woman that looks like Agatha doesn't react when they come through a golden gate. In WandaVision, Agatha never reacted when Wanda used her magic, so it could be a similar case here. It might just act as a cool nod to the character if anything, but I guess we will see. As we come back to this location later in the episode though, the TVA continue their search for the variant. We find out, however, that our god of mischief hasn't quite given up on his trickster ways just yet, evidenced by the fact that he tries to fool the group into thinking that they'll be murdered by the Loki variant if they step outside the tent, and that he's the only one who should approach the variant without dying, with the timekeepers being in grave danger. This is of course a big lie, and Mobius immediately calls Loki out on it, unravelling Loki's real plan in front of him. He's just trying to weasel his way in front of the timekeepers in an attempt to seize control of the TVA, rather than plead for his life and avoid being erased from the timeline. Once again, the series touches on who Loki really is, with Mobius describing him as a scared little boy, shivering in the cold who has a constant need for validation. But Loki isn't just a science fiction adventure series, as Mobius forces Loki to get his detective hat on to figure out how the variant is hiding themselves from the TVA. Being held captive at the TVA, Loki is able to access files and find out information on incidents throughout history, from far in the past to way into the future. As the Loki in the series is the 2012 version of the character from the first Avengers film, he is yet to experience the annihilation of Asgard in the 2017 blockbuster Thor Ragnarok. While reading about Ragnarok at the TVA, Loki has a growing idea while trying to figure out how the Loki variant on the loose is avoiding capture. He informs Mobius that the other Loki is hiding out in apocalypses throughout time, using the destructive events to cover their tracks. His logic is that if the doomsday in question is destined to happen, leaving no survivors, then any action that Loki makes beforehand shouldn't make a difference to the timeline. After testing his theory with Mobius at the famous eruption in Pompeii, his hypothesis is proven correct. Could Loki's fascination with Ragnarok result in him taking a trip through memory lane to visit his brother Thor, and perhaps even warn his future self that he's going to be killed by Thanos, as viewers witness in Avengers Infinity War? Potentially, as this show is fully dealing with time and how that affects Loki, but as we see later on in the episode, I think we are going to see more multiverse related changes, and the nostalgia in the first two episodes is mainly used to get a reaction from Loki. But considering that they used Ragnarok as an important plot point in this episode, then of course it's key to keep in mind. But after an opening which showed a member of the TVA being abducted by the Loki variant, we come back to this character later in the episode once Mobius and his team have found her, and she reveals that she told her captor how to find the timekeepers, the all-powerful beings who decide the events that are supposed to happen in accordance with their sacred timeline. This means that in addition to there being two different versions of the God of Mischief, Loki and Lady Loki have another thing in common, and that is to meet the Timekeepers. Considering their shared ambition, could the two Lokis end up working together to achieve their aim and come face to face with the supposedly godly beings, considering Loki following Lady Loki through the portal she made at the end of the episode? Or could Lady Loki's likely malicious intent for wanting to find the Timekeepers put her at odds with our Loki? Well, that's a question for another time, but we do get a better idea of what Lady Loki may have done to the timeline at the end of this episode. Whenever the Loki variant has shown up and launched an attack on the TVA's Minutemen, they have also stolen reset charges, devices the TVA used to reset timelines in the event of breaches. The TVA had no idea what the Loki variant planned on using the reset charges for, but they might have a better idea now. When Loki and the TVA track the Loki variant down to the Rocks Cart in Alabama in the year 2050, Lady Loki sets off the reset charges she has accumulated in what appears to be a chain reaction. Back at the TVA, Lady Loki's actions spiral into chaos as the organisation witnesses several breaches of the timeline branch out all at once. Has Lady Loki caused mayhem in the multiverse that the TVA will be able to reverse? Could this be the main triggering event of the multiverse narrative that we will see play out in Doctor Strange 2 and Spider-Man? Well, potentially, as Kevin Feige has said that Loki is the most connected to the MCU, and maybe it's for the sole purpose of starting this multiverse war. We'll have to see, but it will be interesting regardless to witness what happens to the sacred timeline and whether the TVA will be able to contain the chain reaction. But that was my brief breakdown video on Loki episode 2, along with the reveal of the Lady Loki variant. Overall, I thought this episode was as good as the first one, focusing on the main plotline at play, while also continuing to develop Loki and his inner impulses. The reveal of Lady Loki is also a great one that makes us think about the other Lokis that could come into the show, like President Loki, King Loki, and more. As long as they don't deviate from the tone and story that they have established in the first 2 episodes, then I think this is by far the best of the Marvel Disney Plus shows thus far. I'm giving episode 2 of Loki an 8.25 out of 10. I hope you guys enjoyed my breakdown, and overall, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next week in the new Marvel show, which I will be covering here on the channel. I'm also intrigued to hear all of your thoughts on episode 2, so let me know down below in the comment section, as well as listing your predictions for episode 3. For more content on shows like Loki, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. I am covering and bringing constant updates on all the new Marvel shows, so make sure to keep a lookout for whenever I post. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.